Inspire with Nendrix, the foundation. Malika boy.
Hello and welcome back to Your Best Life with Dr. Hairston, founder and president of Embracing Arms Incorporated and the brand movement, hashtag Your Best Life. Thank you for joining us again as we engage in meaningful dialogue with law enforcement and military officials from around the country, which is, of course, very special to me as I am celebrating what would be my mother's 70th birth month. My mother was a retired Pennsylvania State Police officer before passing in August of 2009. And she started her career with the State Police in 1980. I was 7 years old. So that's about 9 years after the first female cadets were welcomed to the academy. So I spent most of my life being raised and mentored by amazing law enforcement officials and have always been fascinated by and intrigued by women who actually chose this as a career. As I know all too well, some of the trials and tribulations of navigating this white male dominated space as a female, especially as an African-American female in law enforcement. So today we are embarking on our part 3 of Women with Badges. We're just traveling the globe, and I've had an opportunity to be introduced to this amazing woman, and she's going to be talking to us a little bit today about her perceptions of the culture, recruitment, retention, and promotion of women. And her name is Malika Rahman. Malika is the founder and CEO of Be a Great You Incorporated. This is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to inspire youth to strive for greatness and exceed the world's expectations. She has also served as a law enforcement officer for over 10 years, most recently as a deputy sheriff detective. Can you get into that, y'all? A deputy sheriff detective. Did you hear what I just said? And this is in Philadelphia with the Philadelphia Sheriff's Office. Although she was born in Baltimore, Maryland, Malika has embraced Philadelphia as her home, my hometown. In addition to everything that Malika does in her community and within her family, much of her personal life has revolved around community service and the empowerment of those around her. Through Be a Great You Incorporated, Malika has developed community-based programs such as She Is Me and Brothers in Bow Ties, which are dedicated to enhancing and empowering the lives of young women and men in urban communities through education and exposure opportunities. Malika has become a highly regarded speaker who fully believes in the power of story to motivate, inspire, and educate. By combining her own personal first-hand experience with her professional expertise, she delivers compelling yet relatable presentations for conferences, interviews, panels, meetings, workshops, and seminars that have been influential in uplifting, empowering, and elevating a variety of audience. Can we get excited about Malika? I have so much more to say about Malika, but we're gonna leave the rest of that to Malika to share. So welcome, Malika. Thank you for giving me your time today.
Thank you for having me. It is an honor, and I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. I'm glad that you carved out some time. I know that we are all busy. Things are just moving and shaking nowadays, and that you thought enough to give me a few minutes of your time today. I really appreciate that, and I respect that, and I'm going to respect your time. So I want to flip this over to you real quick, because I just gave the community just a little taste of who Malika is. So why don't you share with them a little bit about yourself, and why did you decide to get into law enforcement?
So first of all, I think you've done a great job at the introduction. I always say, people like, well, they've done it. But what I will say is the piece that you don't get to see, and I'm glad you asked the question of what made you get into it. And that's a real thing. So for me, I wanted to be a lawyer, right? And I was laughing when you and I talked, because I was like, oh, maybe we were meant to do this. So I wanted to be a lawyer because for me, I always liked the idea of getting dressed, And I got to carry a briefcase and look very powerful. And I love to debate. That was my thing. So I said, I'm going to go be a lawyer. And I was in college and life happened. And I ended up having to take a little break. And during that time, I worked as a correctional officer. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. I was like, I don't want to do this. And a friend of mine, her husband was a sheriff. So we talked about it. And I've always been one to defy odds. So if somebody told me I couldn't do something, I would find a way to do it. And this particular thing, they said, you can't be a sheriff unless you have 15 years or more in. They won't take you. They don't hire people like that. So I said, okay. So I silently sat at my computer one day, filled out the application. I didn't tell anybody. And I was asking one of the older guys I work with, I said, so what do you think about young people being sheriffs? Like, do you think that that's possible? He was like, yeah, man. So I said, okay. So I sat with it. And I got a letter. They told me to come down and start the process. I went, filled out my information. And I remember laying on my couch one day. And it was a really rough time. And there was just a lot going on in my life. And I remember my phone ringing. And the voice on the other end of the phone said, Malika Rahman. I said, yes. You're going down to the Philadelphia Sheriff's Office. If you have any questions, call them. And hung up. The human resource person during that time was a lady named Miss Smart. And I called her and I was crying. And she was like, Malika, it's okay, relax, like it's okay. And I was like, you don't understand. And I told her, I remember telling her on the phone, I said, Miss Hope, I said, I don't usually make promises. I said, but you will not be mad and you will not regret this decision. I left that office in 2018. And before I left, she called me in her office and she said, I just want to thank you for keeping your word because you did not make me regret my decision. So for me, going into law enforcement was about defying odds and doing what people told me I couldn't do.
Wow. Look, you wanted to change my career. Like, man, I'm doing what Malika did. That's awesome. You know, I think that you definitely, we are supposed to be connected because that was my focus. I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to get dressed. I want to be cute. I used to tell my mother, I'm like, I want to be these people because she used to always have me downtown Philadelphia. You know how I want to work downtown. I don't know what they doing, but I want to work downtown. They got the briefcase. They looking good.
See, yes. Come on.
Same thing. And I think, you know, just having that why, like, I think sometimes people go into these careers and not really think through, like, what is your why in approaching this particular career? And my why for being an attorney was just, I want to be cute, right? And then when we realize this ain't cute, wait, I don't want to do this, right? So recognizing that early on is really important when you're going to something, especially as important as law enforcement or military, becoming military personnel. I did read an article that was published by the National Center of Women in Policing. It was an article that was done back in 1980, so about 40 years ago, which is the same year. So 1980 was the same year that my mom completed her academy. And before, you know, becoming a trooper. The article outlined some of the top concerns of female officers. And some of those top concerns were like sexual assaults, unfair promotional practices. They talked a little bit in that article about issues related to women starting families, being pregnant, and some of the limitations that they had during that time. How, in your opinion, how has representation and the experiences of women in policing changed in those years?
So I would say you definitely see an increase of women in leadership, right, in top brass. And that's a big thing that I think is needed for the generations to come for longevity. If you want people to stick around in a career, you have to show them. Representation matters. And I know we often use that term when we talk about color representation in the workplace, having African-American people so that African-American people can become a part of the company. But when we talk about gender and we talk about specific roles, especially in law enforcement, having women in leadership matters. And Even though it is very few. I think in the U.S. right now, we may have 6 African-American female sheriffs, and I want to say we're at maybe less than the 20s of African-American female chiefs of police. We're making strides, right? We're improving, but those concerns that you mentioned are still very valid 40 years later. Still very valid.
Wow.
Because if you have children, are you available, right? Are you accessible? What does that look like for your family? If you take a job as a police chief, it's likely not going to be in the state where you live. So are you willing to relocate and uproot your family? You know, in the prisons, there was this thing, if you got pregnant, they had a matron's dress that they would put you in, right? When men have babies, they don't have to change their outfits. They don't have to change a uniform. They don't have to change a post. They don't have to limit the time that they work. So these are real things and real factors that women have to consider. And I think it's something that has to be talked about, because if you devote your energy to your career, I just turned 34 Saturday.
Oh, wow.
And
belated birthday.
you know, of all the things that I've done in my career, I tell people all the time, I didn't have time to think about having children because I knew the sacrifice that I would have to make. So for me, the sacrifice was, in order to do this, I have to sacrifice here.
Right.
That shouldn't have to be the decision we have to make to succeed.
Right, right. And I think that was the decision that my mother, you know, had to make. When my mom first decided to become a state police officer, her and my dad worked at Hanneman Hospital as lab technicians. I don't know, she woke up one day and was like, I guess I'll be a cop. I'm like, hey, where do you do that at? You know, and she was tiny, little tiny thing, you know, and she, you know, she was looking at the fact that she had these little kids, you know, that she wasn't making enough money, and you know, that was her primary motivator. Like, I need to do better. You know, I need to have better opportunities, and I can do this. I can fight. I can be out there in the streets, right? And so, but doing that, she had to leave us, because in the state police, they send you to a whole nother, you know, part of the state. So she had to leave us, you know, with our uncles. And so, you know, making that sacrifice. And I'm glad that she did, you know, in hindsight, but that was difficult for her, you know, to do, you know, at the time. And so in that same article that I was reading, because it was also talking about some of the things that you were saying, you know, that women had to kind of change the way they were dressed, like everything. They didn't even have bulletproof vests that was created specifically for women, and the way our bodies are structured, and uniforms that were created for the way our bodies were structured. So there was that something, you know, that they had to kind of deal with at the time. But in the same article that I referred to, it suggested that the presence of women could bring about significant beneficial changes in policy. And then fast forward just last year, in an article published by the National Institute of Justice, it also suggested the same thing. In fact, it shares that women can have a significant impact on community policing and the overall morale of law enforcement officers across the country. But it seems like not much movement have been made to fully embrace that whole concept. Do you believe, or what do you believe are the difference between women and men police officers? And do you think there's a difference in the way that they police?
So yes, I do believe that there is a difference. And I think the most important difference is that women come with a nurturing distinction about, right? We have a nurturing characteristic, and it's almost innate. What people say, well, women have an innate nurturing ability. Well, sometimes we do. But the majority of women, we come with it. It's what we do. And it does not, what people say, oh, well, we're not social workers. No, we're not, but we're public servants. And the key to that is servant, right? We have to be willing to provide and offer resources and information to the general public while keeping them safe. That is the job. And what happens is we get into these roles where it becomes masculine or feminine, and we miss the servant piece. Servant does not have a gender, but as a woman, because that is my nature to nurture, then when I show up, I'm asking different questions and assessing a scene very different. I'm likely to understand life perspective and personal perspective than I am to automatically assess this as the same kind of general threat, right? A lot of men take it as a power move, right? It's power. Most women who go into law enforcement, it's about purpose and passion. So we're operating out of different fuels. So you're operating out of 93 all the time. Whereas we can take 87 or 89 and we can make it work. We can go just as fast or just as slow, but we're all about conservation and getting the best out of what we have. So it's a major difference. And I think the difference is necessary to making sure that we get the best out of law enforcement. And that is to make sure we serve the public.
And I did, we were kind of looking at some things. We were having some conversations with a couple of my colleagues around policing, and, lots of articles that was saying that when women show up, when men are teamed up with women in policing, the violence, right? So there's less chances where there will be violence interaction between those who you're supposed to be serving to protect. That when women show up, they feel calmer. Those who you are serving, or those who called the police officers to a scene, they become a little more calm when they see a woman's presence. Do you believe that that's the case also?
Absolutely. And you think about it, they say that most law enforcement issues are domestics. Most of them are nuisance complaints, right? So most of them are something where you need some kind of comfort. You need some reassurance. You don't need a big old burly man to come and save the day. So you think about that. You want something that's going to present itself calm and listen to you. Most people call the police, they want to be heard. They want to be heard. That's why when you pull up, you get out the car, the first thing they do is start talking. Well, let me tell you what happened. It's like, okay, take a deep breath, right? But and when you think about the roles that we serve in our families, that's likely what we encounter at home, right? If you're a parent, you think about your children. If something happens with your kids, as soon as you get home, but mom, but dad, let me tell you, right? And you are able to hear them, assess them, and still get them to calm down, and they don't even realize it.
Exactly. Yeah, that just brought me back to like 20 years ago when I used to come home from work and my kids had gossip out the ears. Like, I gotta tell you something. Let me tell you what my professor did. Let me tell you. And their dad, like, you got this. And he'll walk away in the kitchen, and they'll gravitate towards me because they know that I'm gonna listen, I'm gonna take my time. And dad's like completely disconnected. So yeah, same. So what do we talk a lot about actual police officers and their experience in law enforcement, in the office, and doing the work that we do daily. But we don't talk a lot about the civilian women, the contracting, women that come into these spaces. What do you believe are the experiences of those women working in the police departments as civilians or contractors?
So I think that they get an up close view of the job, but not a personal view of the job. And I have to say that because sometimes we use up close and personal conjointly, and being a civilian still has its limitations. So it gives you access, but not experience. And I think it's good though, because you get to see certain aspects of the job that most people don't normally see on an everyday basis. I think that they are valued because they are most of the time supportive services. They're in administration roles. They are serving in these realms that no, I might not be running down the street to catch bad guys, but I am helping to be a part of the infrastructure of the system that is doing this. So I think that as much as they're not maybe in a uniform and carrying a firearm every day, that they should be acknowledged as a supportive arm of this same system. Because without, I tell everybody, the brightest chief and the best man could run a department, but without a great person who is likely a female, a woman who is in this role supporting you, your emails are going to be swamped, your documents aren't going to get revised properly, and we have some backups. So we know that those roles are essential, although she may not necessarily be the one in need.
Okay. So, when I read your bio and it says that you was a law enforcement officer for 10 years and that you retired, I was like, yeah, that black don't crack thing. Yeah, because she looked like a baby. So, when we show up and first of all, we look very youthful, right? Because that's just in our DNA. And so you showed up on your first day of work in your 20s, early 20s. How did those your colleagues kind of receive you? Because oftentimes we get rejected because we look like a kid.
Oh, they thought I was a joke.
Treat you like a kid. So tell me about that experience.
Yeah, they thought I was a joke. And I think that, again, it was because, she's young, she's a woman, let's just show her how to do this. But as I stated earlier, I am a whirlwind. So when I come somewhere, I'm coming to get the job done.
Exactly.
I wowed them so much that when I graduated the academy, I was the first African-American female sheriff in the city of Philadelphia, let alone the state of Pennsylvania, to graduate top of my class from Penn State Training Academy.
Look, y'all heard that. Y'all heard that? Yeah.
Yes. And I still currently hold that record today. There has not been anyone that has come since I've left to do that.
And y'all heard that on Embracing Arms Incorporated.
Come on here.
Here first.
Heard it here first. So,
that.
it's essential though, because when you come into those places, you don't think about that. They train you to think you just come, do your job. Just come, do your job. No, everything you do, make it great. Because if you can't, then why do it? I don't do anything with mediocrity. Nothing.
Right.
So much so, my exit from the sheriff's office, people always like, wait, you retired? You're only 34. I did. And when I left the sheriff's office, I left to run for sheriff for the city of Philadelphia. So I can't help it. Greatness is just, you tell me I can't, I'm gonna do it.
You gonna do it? Don't put that challenge in front of me. Oh, y'all want me to smash this? Okay, I got you. That is awesome. So, one of the things that I remember clearly about my mother's experience as a police officer is that she would tell us how uniquely difficult it was for her because she was not only battling outside of the office, right? She was battling people who didn't appreciate her being in a uniform out in the streets. She was battling even her own people who thought maybe she was all of that because she was a police officer. She was dealing with all of that, but she was also dealing with the battle within the office. And so often she didn't feel protected no matter what. She didn't feel protected out there, and she didn't feel protected, in within the ranks, right? It also influenced her decision not to seek opportunities to rank or compete for promotional opportunities. She was just so disenchanted with the whole process and felt like even if she would try, she would be stopped merely because she was a female. To what extent, in your opinion, do hiring criteria and some of the requirements to get into the police departments or the force accurately reflect the standards and skills needed to be a successful officer? And do you feel like many times women officers are blocked from achieving extraordinary goals within the ranks?
So first part of that question, the requirements currently are not conducive to whether or not you'll be an effective, whether you'll be good in terms of the role you'll play in law enforcement, right? I think that being able to determine if someone is physically fit is necessary because the job is physical and it can be. So I think that component is necessary, but I do not think that should be the basis or foundation of the criteria that we use, because we're talking about interacting with people's lives. We're talking about somebody with power in their pen. A lot of officers always say, my most powerful weapon is my gun, but it's not. It's your pen. What you put on that paper can change someone's life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What you put on that paper can enter someone into a system that they never should be a part of, right? Mm-hmm. Just like we make transactions with our debit cards. It's so much easier to make the transaction than it is to wait 7 to 10 business days to get your refund. Mm-hmm. And we have that same power when we come into contact with people and have the ability to change their lives. So I think that there needs to be a psychological component that is far more extensive than asking you whether or not, you hate your mother, or whether or not you hated your father from 20 years ago. I think we need a cultural and social component from the beginning, and not just when they get in the academy. But if we're going to put it in the academy, then I think it needs to be a part of the curriculum, and not just a pop-in class here and there. Because what we end up with is people who should never have had the job anyway, but they get it because they can do the right amount of push-ups, or they can run fast enough. That's one piece of the question that you asked. And then I think the other piece is that the structure historically was not set up for women to be promoted, right? And one thing that people know about me is, for people like your mother, is why I do what I do. Because for every door they couldn't go through, I feel like it is our duty to go through them, and not just to go through them mildly and go through them softly, but to kick them off the hinges, so that for no other woman who comes behind us will there be a door or a barrier that they cannot get through. That's just my firm belief. So when we look at that hierarchy, I know women that I worked with who were my supervisors, who suffered from that same glass ceiling that we talk about all the time, this proverbial glass ceiling that's there. It was created because structurally, we talk about wanting differences and diversity, but what we really wanted is the good old boys club to stick around for a few more years. And by doing that, we put the pressure on women to stay down, stay in your place, stay quiet, and let us rise. Where there are very much well-qualified women who could have done the job, not just done it, but done it well, and exceeded the expectations of every one of their counterparts. Prior to 2018, I had one female captain that looked like me at the sheriff's office. One.
Wow.
And we're talking 2018.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was about to say.
And I have one better for you. The sheriff's office in Philadelphia, guess how many female sheriffs they have?
Really?
Guess when it happened?
I was going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but what?
2019. That's when it happened.
Wow.
Right.
So when we're talking about that article that I read in 19, from 19,
Still relevant.
it's like reading it today.
Philadelphia, City of Philadelphia Police Department, first African-American female chief, 2020. First.
Wow.
So we have the double, first African-American female and first female.
Wow. And it's so, to me, it's so amazing that we're still talking about the first in anything,
Yes.
Years later, we're still talking about, every time I go into LinkedIn, it's like, oh, the first African-American, Starbucks, the first African-American over here, CEO of, like, why are we still talking about the first? I mean, and I'm honored because these are my people, should not be that should be common. Like, it should just be the norm.
It should be us. It should just be, this is the qualified person who's coming. And one thing I will say, that I really get kind of touched by when we talk about these first, is that, sis, I appreciate you being the first, but if you're going to be the first and the last, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it, right? Because if you can't create a circle of women around you who can do your job, who you can train and expose, even to the parts that aren't good,
Right.
but when you leave, what is your legacy, right? I did not get to meet your mother, but by virtue of the work that she did, by virtue of the doors that she kicked down, this is the legacy. The fact that we get to sit here years later after she went in and did what she did, 40 years later, we're having a conversation about the work.
Right.
That's what legacy is supposed to be.
Right. And we always misconstrue leadership and impact, right? So a lot of times people leave positions and in their mind it's like, yeah, when I leave, they're going to have a tough time finding somebody to replace me, and they think that's cute. Like, that means you the poor leader, that that's the ideology that you have. Like, a great leader makes sure that there's things put in place so that thing can continue on, whatever that thing was. But you okay with just flatlining these opportunities. So I appreciate, your comment on that. I appreciate that. And it also makes me think about like the way people view power and ambition, right? You talk about like, you give me an opportunity, I'm going to knock that down. I'm going to be up in there, don't challenge me because I'm going to rise up to that challenge. How do people, in your opinion, view power and ambition in women officers compared to how they view their male counterparts?
So I think it's, you think you're better is you're too aggressive. That word really bothers me when they call women aggressive, especially women of color. I do not like it.
Mm-hmm.
You think you know everything. You're not the boss, so don't think you're the boss. And all of the ways that they can describe women. She's an angry Black woman, and she thinks she's this. And the reality is that if it's done in a man, you'll high five them.
Mm-hmm.
You'll high five them for doing it and not doing it well.
Right.
You guys will go out and drink beers because you caught a dog today. Meanwhile, you have a woman who saved a dying baby. But hey, we're not applauding that. If we stand up to something and speak out on something, why would you do that? You're creating trouble. But if a man says something, then, oh yeah, good job. Thanks so much for sticking up for us. And it's like, no. And I tell, the students I have, I teach intro level criminal justice. And these are people who are determining whether or not they want this career. And even when we go to the academy and we have the recruits, I tell them the same thing. Mm-hmm. This is not about being apologetic for who you are. Mm-hmm. They're going to challenge you. Mm-hmm. They are. Your coworkers are going to challenge you. You said it. The streets are going to challenge you. The people you serve are going to challenge you. But you have to stand up and be who you are. That means sometimes you're going to have to correct with a sense of conviction in your voice. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to be stern and firm about what you say. And you're going to have to be firm on your beliefs. This is what I believe. My integrity is my integrity, and you can't waver. Because the moment you come today and be aggressive, and then tomorrow you're subservient and not really sure, they'll take you out.
Mm-hmm. You're so right about that. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen. So, you teach entry-level criminal justice. Which college is that? Which university?
I teach at the Community College of Philadelphia.
Oh, my mom graduated from there.
Yes, come on, Mom.
Divine connections here.
Yeah.
So, you have students coming into your class, and some of them are not sure. They're not quite sure, they're interested. They want to learn something about the criminal justice system, but they're not quite sure. What advice would you pull them aside? If you see someone that has the greatest potential, like you're watching them and you're getting to see them and you're listening, you're talking to them, what advice would you pull them aside and give a woman who's interested in entering the field and following in your footsteps, especially as it relates to mental preparedness and identifying mentorship opportunities?
So the first thing I would tell them is to check their why. Like, why are you doing this? What do you want it for? Because if they say, Ms. Rahman, I just really want a good job so I can make some money and take care of my family, because that's a real thing, right? I can't tell them not to. I can tell them the best way to do that. But the reality is, do you want to carry a gun just to make money for your family? I wouldn't want you carrying a gun just because you want to check, because that means that you're going to opt for the check if you ever have to use your gun, right? So we're weighing the options here. But I would definitely tell them to consider their why first. And then getting into the piece about mentorship and mental preparedness is that there is nothing that will prepare you for what you'll see on this job. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you go in with the right mindset and that you're willing to learn and be teachable, that's the key. A willingness to learn with a student who is not teachable is like putting seeds on dead soil.
That's right.
So making yourself teachable and then being able to identify relationships that are mentorships and not infatuations. Mm-hmm. Young officers can come in and meet someone who sees and be infatuated with that person represents and think that that is a mentorship. Mm-hmm. Mentorships are equal partnerships. This person has a vested interest in you. They want to see you do well. And what I tell my students in identifying mentors is look at who they have mentored before you. Mm-hmm. If they do not have any mentors when you enter into this career, they are not your mentor.
Absolutely.
You cannot be an experiment when your life depends on what happens.
Absolutely.
Check their fruit. And that, to me, I think it is so important, is look at who they have produced.
Right, right.
If they have not produced greatness, that's not your mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Sad to say, some of my greatest mentors have been men. Unfortunately, it's the career that I came into.
Mm-hmm.
I found women who I was able to meet and connect with, and when I did, I latched on. And now, I, in any way, shape, or form that I can, I honor them for what they poured into me.
Right.
But I started this thing out learning from men, and I started to reflect some behaviors and traits that men had. So much so that people are like, Malika, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Right. And when I found my femininity, because I saw women who did it, and it was like, I can do this like this. I don't have to be like them. It helped. So you may not find that mentorship in your organization, but through your organization, you'll be able to connect with those people who do have a vested interest and want to see you succeed.
And that's definitely good advice. I think sometimes that, people are infatuated, like the infatuation part of the mentor, like, oh, she's cute, or, everybody like her. Like, I want her to be my mentor, or all the wrong reasons for identifying someone to be their mentor. But looking at their history of mentoring, if they even provided mentorship. I know when my mom was going through the academy, she was the only African-American female in her academy training. And so she had men or, nothing at the time during that, because she didn't know anyone. And so as soon as she got out of the academy, she latched on, to any opportunities to connect to someone that looked like her, that can kind of tell her what to kind of expect. And she did the same thing that you suggest, that she looked at those people whom this individual groomed and helped and, gave, opportunities to, or put opportunities in front of them and challenged them to take advantage of those things. So that's a really, really good, suggestion for our young people who are interested in getting into the law enforcement, understanding the mental health, because it is tough. It's very, very tough to maintain. And I know that just reading some of the articles, I think I read something not too long ago. Well, I'm gonna act like it wasn't too long ago, and it was a while ago. And when I was much younger, I was reading a report. And it was established by the FBI Academy. And it was this instant, they were having like a conference on domestic violence that happens amongst the ranks. And so police officers and perpetrators of domestic violence. And so there's so much that goes on. And a lot of that was exacerbated by drinking and just the stress that happens at work. And they take it, back, to home. So there's a lot of stress associated with this type of job. And no one can prepare you. No one can prepare you for what you're going to see, what you're going to feel, what you're going to hear. And so reaching out to the right people and embracing the right people is always the best tickets. Well, thank you. Thank you for that advice. It's very helpful. And I know that's going to be helpful for, someone that's young, that's, coming through your classes, or those people that you interact with on a daily basis that just want to know, like, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to prepare for this opportunity? So this is time for our lightning round. And this is an opportunity for me to share some controversial questions with you, or some controversial statements. Not that the questions that we've already talked about were controversial, but this gives you 20 seconds. We have 5 statements or 5 questions, and we give you 4 seconds to respond to each one of those. Are you ready for these controversial questions?
Let's do it.
All right. All right. The first one, defund the police.
No.
The second one, woman officer presence actually reduces violence.
Yes.
The next one, is the term de-escalation overused and confusing?
Overused, yes. Confusing, no. I think misinterpreted.
Misinterpreted. Good response. Immigration and sanctuary laws, are they under control, or is it a big mess?
A big mess.
And finally, officers should live in the community they serve.
Live, no. Be a part of or connected to, yes.
Awesome. Awesome. See, that wasn't too bad. That wasn't too bad. Thank you.
No, not at all. And it's funny, those are all the things that, you know, I'm very much passionate about. So you asked to write those.
Oh, that's perfect. That's first thing we're in line.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you. I want to thank you again, Minister Malika, President and CEO Malika, retired officer Malika, all those things, community advocate Malika. I want to thank you for giving me your time today. It was very helpful. I'm sure it was wonderful for others who are listening in, trying to figure out what's going on in law enforcement and how can I be a part of this experience, especially as a woman and more specifically as an African-American woman. So I want to thank you for your time today and blessing us with your presence.
Well, thank you for having me. This was super enjoyable. I always love when I get to talk about the job, but especially talking about it, you know, with the legacy of someone who paved the way for me. That you know, it's a true honor for me. So I'm very grateful. And you all will be seeing me again, and we're gonna have Dr. Hairston Green at the Community College of Philadelphia. So be on the lookout.
Listen, you know I'll be on the first thing smoking. So let me know.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you again. And thank you, listeners. Thank you for coming back and tuning in for part 3 of Women with Badges. We've always been so super delighted to engage with our community, engage with individuals who are changing the world and meeting the needs of our families throughout this country. If there was something that you heard today that energized you or triggered additional question, please remember to comment below, like, share, and subscribe. And join us again next month as we begin a new series interviewing parents from across the country about their homeschooling journey during COVID-19. And remember, if you want to get in contact with Miss Malika Rahman, please, below, you'll see her link. Get in contact with her. Check out her website. Contribute to her organization. She's doing amazing work in Philadelphia. Please get in contact with her. I want to remind you also, all of my listeners, to be safe out there. Practice social distancing. And if you don't want to wear a face covering for you, please wear it because you care about someone else. Continue to go out into the community and embrace someone because they are waiting for you. And in the meantime, live your absolute best life.
Hello, Embracing Arms community. I am Malika Rahman, and I am the founder of Be a Great You nonprofit organization. And guess what? I'm stopping by to you today to remind you to live your best life.
Inspire with Nendrix. The foundation. Malika boy, this is my residence. My prescription, boy, this is my medicine. The world can be sickening, living in house resemblance. Not to mention the media's effort to keep us in the most simplistic state of mind. Lowest age bracket committing the highest rate of crime. People dying way before they hit their age of prime. Thinking success only happens if they shoot hoops, move cane or rhyme. Peek through these blinds, over the porch and into these streets. You see why protective moms keep their daughters out of reach from activities. Sure to have them 6 feet deep under the grounds where our local dope dealers meet.